earlier today. Michelle Rempel joins me now, Member of Parliament for Calgary Nose Hill. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
You're in high demand when stories like this break out because you've been on top of this story since the very beginning. Of course, this is going back to the SNC-Lavalin situation with Jodi Wilson-Raybould. Tell us what your initial thoughts were when first you heard that the decision had come out or the report had come out today.
Right. And just for people who are listening, going back to when this story broke, this is really about the Prime Minister being accused of meddling in the independence of our judicial system for a company that stands accused of very serious bribery charges, including bribing Libyan officials with prostitutes in Canada. So this is a really serious case. And today, after months of the Prime Minister saying, nope, nothing to see here, folks, firing Jodi Wilson-Raybould for standing up to him, he was actually found guilty of doing all of the above. So this is really serious. And certainly I think, the Alberta angle here for me is all along Trudeau has been saying that this, his actions to basically protect his rich buddies was to quote unquote protect jobs, which we know is a fallacy. Well, what about the jobs in our province, right?
Well, that's the thing. That's a chord that was struck immediately from Albertans because I was working the day that first came out. And that was one of the first things we saw on our text line is, are you kidding me? Like, what about
Absolutely.
What's happened here in Alberta?
Yeah. So, the first part of the story for me is really, look, this is a guy that broke the law. He got caught covering up breaking the law and he can't be trusted. But his motivation on this was his own political job, not ours. And I think that's the hallmark of Justin Trudeau, right? Time and time again, he puts his interests before the needs of the country. He's been one of the most divisive prime ministers. There are so many people when I talk to on the door that are just struggling. They haven't had work. Today, to me, there's nobody in the country that should be considering voting for this man. He's lost the moral authority to govern. Even a diehard Liberal that's listening to this should be concerned about the fact you've got a Prime Minister meddling in the judiciary, right? That's what dictatorships do. So he's got to go. He's got to go. We're 68 days away from the election, and this needs to be a ballot question.
Well, and this is the thing I think is that, when you're watching this unfold and you see that Butts comes back,
right?
It seems very much like if you are sitting in their war room, it seems to me that this is, as they're doing their polling across the country, they're thinking, that actually didn't hurt us that much.
Yeah, and this is not the first thing, right? He's had the whole Caribbean island Aga Khan vacation thing that he was found guilty of violating the ethics code. You had Dominic LeBlanc, essentially being accused of rigging a contract for his family that was under his purview. We could go through a litany of things here, right? And at some point in time, Canadians have to go, wait, we pay your salary to serve us, not the other way around? When are you going to do something for us and stop basically rigging the system to enrich yourself? And to me, again, this should be a nonpartisan issue. This should be something that all Canadians are like, nope, we're not going here. Because, I said this earlier today, there's a lot of people who came to our country who have worked really hard to make our country a great place, who fled from countries where you have people, protecting their friends by making court cases go away. And that's not what we should be standing for in Canada. And you know what? Democracy doesn't die in this fiery Hollywood-esque explosion. It happens when people don't care about things like this. Under no circumstance should a man who's been found guilty of something like this be allowed to govern this country. Full stop.
Now, playing devil's advocate on this one. I'm just asking, is this a situation where people might be listening and feeling cynical and saying, oh, come on, this happens all the time in politics. It's just that he got caught. Is that true?
No.
Or is it that it does not happen in politics? I mean, you have a better sense of that from your perspective.
I mean, it does happen all the time when the Liberals are in power, right? Because this is essentially, this harkens back to the sponsorship scandal, right? And Prime Minister Harper was put in place a series of rules to prevent, this is the independent prosecutor office, right? Our Conservative government put that in place to make sure Liberal governments in the future didn't meddle like that again. And it was a trap that worked perfectly. He stepped right into it, right? So you know what? I don't accept that it is okay or that we should be cynical and be like, well, a little bit of this. The only thing that separates Canada from, countries where you have the judicial system being corrupt and not delivering justice is ensuring that you don't have political interference in here, in that. And we've got the highest level of government. We've got the Prime Minister of the country being found guilty of doing that. So Canadians should care. And no, it shouldn't be something that we say like, oh, it happens. It doesn't happen. I guess it does under Liberal governments, but it's not okay.
I think that's the question that you hear, is that people are wondering, is it something that, it just happens all the time? And so I'm glad to ask you that, have you answer that. I want to get into what you think this might do with this report coming out now in the process, because the election, obviously, most people weren't expecting this decision or this report to come out so soon. I'd like to get into that coming up in just a few minutes. We have to quickly stop for helicopter traffic. It is 5:17 right now. Helicopter traffic for West District by Truman. Our main streets highlight 20-foot sidewalks and integrated bike paths. We're just chatting with MP Michelle Rempel. We'll be back with more on that in just a few minutes.
He knows a good story when he hears one, and he loves sharing them even more. Calgary Today with Joe McFarland on 770 CHQR.
Well, good afternoon, 5:19. We were just chatting with Michelle Rempel, MP for Calgary Nose Hill. Michelle, thank you again for being with us, sticking through the commercial break. I want to get into a couple of questions here. Now, people are saying, we in the West are very upset about this whole situation and seem to have been since the very beginning of the SNC-Lavalin thing, and very strong support for Jodi Wilson-Raybould when that entire process went down. What are you hearing in the East? What are you hearing as far as, is this even a story that's resonating?
Sure. I've had the opportunity to travel across the country this year, especially to support some of our Conservative candidates. I was all across Atlantic Canada. I've been in Ontario extensively, and I think people are really disappointed with the Trudeau government for a variety of reasons, this being part of it. When I get asked this question, and not just specific to SNC-Lavalin, but specifically around the Alberta jobs crisis, what does Ontario think of this? My message to anybody in Ontario would be this. Look, if you had a prime minister, let's say Trudeau put out a bill or a series of bills that was designed to shut down the auto sector, Albertans would be
instead of
really
support
mad.
It right in the midst of all this.
Yeah, Albertans would be mad because we're a country that's united through prosperity, right? And so to me, somebody in Ontario who thinks that it's okay for Trudeau to put in place bills like C-69, C-48 that have essentially shut down our economy, and they think that it's not an issue for them, wrong. That oil and gas has to be an issue for people voting in Ontario and Trudeau's performance on it, because we're either a country or we're not.
But
right?
Are they hearing that message?
I hope so. Certainly, I think that this story today really, for a lot of Canadians, asks the question: can he be trusted? I think the answer is pretty clearly no. This is not the first time that this has happened in four years. Like, oh my God. So I think that a lot of people's trust of him has been eroded. And now it's up to us to really show the country what we are going to do, how we are going to lead the country to prosperity and unity. And I think that we've been doing that with a series of policy announcements. So I don't know how anyone can look at this and feel compelled to vote for this person. I really don't, regardless of stripe. This is just morally wrong.
Do you think this report would have been better time to come out in 4 weeks?
You can't look at election timing when the truth needs to come out, right? I am really glad, and I commend Ethics Commissioner Dion for his work and getting this out. I think certainly we're in the middle of the summer. I'm sure that there's some Liberal strategists that are like, oh, well, it's the middle of August. No one's paying attention, whatever. That's why I think it's every Canadian's job to talk to their friends and family about this and to not let this go away, because this is not a minor issue, right? This is when has this ever happened in the history of our country, right? And we either support our democratic institutions or we don't. And, a vote for Trudeau means that you don't care about this. It's as simple as that.
I mean, you would also hear people saying that this is only the second prime minister to have an ethics commission this extensive, keeping an eye on things. So is it something that couldn't have happened to any other?
You know what? I have to say, again, going back to our conversation before the break, this is the sponsorship scandal again. I mean, like, Liberals get in and two things happen. You know, Western Canada kind of gets the short end of the stick or the short straw, and we see stuff like this, right? They're in it to enrich their buddies, and they don't care about this part of the country. And, we're just tired of it. This is like history repeating itself, right? I mean, the son finished the job of the father. And I just really hope that the rest of the country understands how bad it is here and understands that everybody has a job to do on October 21st. And it's making sure that this person who has used the role of prime minister for his own personal self-aggrandizement and, helping his friends, that's not what that job is for, and he needs to go.
So we're out of time, but I have to ask you this question. What happens next for you guys? Will you be pushing for some sort of an investigation further to this?
Yeah, our leader, Andrew Scheer, was out this afternoon renewing his calls for the RCMP to investigate. I certainly hope that they do that. I think there's a lot of reason to do that now. But also, we are going to keep putting out policy that shows Canadians what we are going to do for them and putting out a positive message, especially for the economy here in Alberta. So that's, as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to be getting back into my community and door knocking and showing people what we're going to do for them.
Michelle, thank you so much for your time today. We always appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
It's 5:24.